6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually by Anna Forsyth at A4Forsyth03, and for possibly the last time officially ever, Mattley at Mattley_61, remaining unfit to podcast, not entirely sure he's on the taxi squad, might be in Manitoba for all we know. Adam Omenel Carter at Adam FOC, but welcome, Matt and Anna. How goes it?
Yeah, all right, considering.
I mean, I'm doing better than the Vancouver Canucks are at this point in time, Monday night, Chris.
We're going to get into obviously what happened this evening in tonight's episode, or today's episode, depending on when you're going to listen to it. But I was sort of thinking of possible, titles for the show. And prior to the effort, I thought I was going to make some punny sensational week. It doesn't feel the same anymore after one game.
It's funny. I thought we would be discussing the Canucks own the Ottawa Senators and they did great on Saturday night against the Winnipeg Jets. They're back, baby. They're going to be a top 4 team in the North Division. And it's amazing how one performance, yet another performance against the Montreal Canadians can absolutely change the entire perplexion of tonight. The last podcast episode I will ever be a co-host of.
By the way, I just thought of a episode title, so don't worry, we're good.
We're good? Okay. It's funny though, Matt, like you say, we thought they're going to be a top 4 team, and this one night put that into question. Frankly, they might still be a top 4 team in the North because of how it's clearly the Toronto Maple Leafs near the top. You have the Canadians, who I think are really showing that they own that second spot. They'll be fighting the Leafs possibly. But then, shut up, phone. But then you have the Canucks, who are, my phone was going beep, beep, beep.
I was about to ask, did you guys get a bird or something?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes, we totally got a bird. It's my phone.
You got a flock of seagulls.
Off the rails. Backstory on that. When we got these Pixel 3s, I was going through trying to find a tone, because Marnie has one too, and we needed to have different notification sounds. And so I'm going through, and when I got to the bird one, Baby Force, Ari, she oh my goodness, she giggled. She loved it. She loved that Daddy's phone sounded like a bird. So I'm like, oh, there, that's mine.
I'm Dad of the Year.
Yeah, it was dad of the day, really. Maybe
I was going to say, this is, again, off the rails, but, it's such a petty thing, but if you're around people, whether it's your significant other or your roommate, does it annoy you when their text tone, means different things? So for me, my WhatsApp tone, which is the most common tone, it's one ding, and then if someone has that for a different notification, it really annoys me.
Well, okay, yeah, it's the same notification sound on someone else's phone. For
because I know when my phone goes off, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Facebook, whether it's a text, not that common, but yeah.
But back on the rails that week again was an interesting week. I think, Anna, you and I were bang on saying what we needed to see from the team. We saw it. They then followed up with that effort on Saturday and then proceeded to break Brent butt today. I don't know if you saw, but Brent actually tweeted out he was going to be late to the game, and then he tweeted out, I'm not going to bother. And it's like, oh my God, you broke BB on Canucks. I can't believe it. How dare you?
I mean, the real danger is if Clay goes negative, then it's gotten really bad.
Oh, and it was funny that Clay was in his post or intermission, whatever video reviews.
In his car?
He was actually at his office. He had an event he had to deal with. But otherwise, they're normally in his car. He was finding positives in that first period. I wouldn't say where they didn't exist, because in fairness, Clay found positives. And then in the second intermission, he found fewer positives. And then in the essentially the final review prior to his actual post game later tonight, he was like, "Yeah, they've regressed. Things that we thought they had gotten out of, like when Clay starts to go negative, you done screwed up." Oh, I'm going to go off the rails again. I don't know if you noticed, but Clay shared news today that he got a copyright claim on his YouTube channel for the video of him falling into his window. Who did he get that copyright claim from? America's Funniest Home Videos, or America's Funniest Videos. So they actually filed a copyright claim on him for one of his videos. Why? Clay actually submitted it to America's Funniest Videos. And part of the submission process is that you're giving up rights to your video. And so ultimately, having it on YouTube opened Clay up, because he had essentially
I was going to say, like,
given it away.
read those contracts carefully before you give away your work. That's like Creator 101.
Yeah. He also had one apparently about a video that he did during the Olympics. But I know, like, the Olympics organization, they don't mess around. They, in fact, wasn't it them that were trying to like copyright the word Olympics or Olympic? I think it was Olympic.
I was going to say, there are certain people that you know are pretty litigious, like super off the rails, but there's this cricket YouTuber who just has hours and hours of recordings of vintage cricket games, and like cricketers from the 80s will come to him and say, "Do you have this like clip from so and so?" And he's beloved of all cricket fans, no matter what country you come from. And then Cricket Australia tried to find a copyright claim to him. Yeah. And everyone just came down so hard on them that they dropped it, and he's not ever been bothered again.
Bringing it closer to being on the rails, speaking of copyright, friends of the show, The Broadcast, are currently dealing with a copyright claim against one of their charity initiatives.
Luckily, I think they have some in-house expertise.
You think do they have a lawyer-ish better than me? Because apparently I'm
a lawyer on retainer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you guys say I'm HR, you say I'm lawyer, I'm the ICBC expert. Matt earlier said I was Dad of the Year. I'd rather take that of all the list. But anywho, no, this is Matt's.
If anyone's going to be all right, they will.
Yeah, but this, as I said, this is Matt's last show, and look at Annie. You and I are completely taking it off the rails to celebrate.
I know.
You guys
Matt's
are
just trying not to explode.
No, I was going to say, you guys are really throwing a tribute here by trying to get me to say we should get back on the rails as much as possible. So I think it seems more poetic than anything.
To interject.
We were setting you up, Matt.
I'm being completely courteous. I'm relishing the last time we will gather like this for an episode, at least officially in this role. So it seems very fitting that we started the episode with the most off the rails 5 minutes ever.
But what will we talk about this week? Well, as we said, we're going to talk about the week that was. We're going to talk about the week that will be. Probably a little other bits and bobs that we can think of, and a whole lot of off-the-rails talk. Because why not? It's Matt's last show, and we need to ensure we amp that up a bit so he remembers us fondly. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and Full Press Coverage Network. Going back to that last show, Anna, we were talking about how we needed to see the Canucks get 3 wins out of 3 against the Ottawa Senators. And as we know, they listened to this show, they darn well did. Not only did they get those 3 wins, though, they actually won in pretty decent fashion. I mean, we consider the results of each of the games. While the Canucks got outshot in every single one of them, which is a problem, arguably, I was never worried. Oh, no.
Like, there were maybe that first period of the game where they got outshot 24-7, right?
Okay, yeah, that was the game. Yeah, I had missed that, and I'd asked, how did it go? And I think you had meant, the Canucks always in the driver's seat, and you're like, they weren't even in the car for the first period. But yeah, no, they took over after that. Yeah, that game. Yeah. That maybe there was some worry there.
But yeah, Sens don't have the finishing power whatsoever to really challenge or make Canucks pay for the short attempts they surrendered. And to be fair to them, they weren't high danger most of the time.
Yeah, honestly, my thoughts on the Sens, and it's probably going to apply for the rest of the season in the games that the Canucks play against Ottawa, is just that Ottawa has a great group of individual talents on their team. You've got Tim Stützle, you've got Brady Tkachuk, you've got Thomas Chabot. They've got a whole bunch of individuals that still don't know how to come together as a team yet. So it's kind of like you're starting a puzzle piece and you've got 1,000 pieces and you've just put like 5 or 6 together and you're still figuring out how it's all going to come together. So the Sens are a great group of individual talents that have not yet learned to play as a team and are still developing because they're raw talents. And so I think that plays into why the Senators have struggled so much, not just against the Vancouver Canucks, but against the rest of the North Division as a whole. So I think the Sens have a great, bright future ahead of them. But this season is not going to be it. And it's funny because you actually look at the Sens, they look like what the Canucks started to look like when Brock Besser was coming around in town. You had Bo Horvat on the scene, then you had Brock Besser coming. So like the talent is coming, but they still need more and they still need to learn how to play together as a team.
Yeah. And much like the Canucks maybe depend on good goaltending to get them out of trouble, Ottawa aren't there yet with the goaltending. I mean, there's been much talk about how unlucky Matt Murray has been, but yeah, there was quite a few goals that an NHL goaltender should be stopping. No.
Well, I mean, we also have to consider, one, the Vancouver Canucks did show up to play the Senators with a far better effort in at least most of those 3 games than we really ever saw in any period against the Montreal Canadiens. I think that's where alarm bells were going off. But also the Vancouver Canucks seem to figure out how to prevent their mistakes from hurting them. I think they only gave up 1 power play goal on the kill. While there were giveaways, we saw Holtby and particularly Demko stand tall, which, again, we're accustomed to Vancouver Canucks goaltenders needing to steal wins. And I wouldn't say we saw a Canuck goaltender steal wins, but they definitely did everything they needed to do to ensure that the Canucks remained in control. So going through the 3 games against Ottawa, when the Stanley Cup parade was being planned and everyone had decided that Jim Benning should get re-upped for another 10 years and Travis Green is going to be the coach forever, we then go into Winnipeg. And so the Canucks had, and this actually blew my mind, they had like a 10-game losing streak, or they'd only had like 1 win in 10 games against the Jets or something like that?
Yeah, I don't remember who it was that posted this, but someone posted a look at the roster that the Canucks had, and I think the last time they beat the Jets was the one Tortorella year, and they had something like Tom Sestito, Nicholas Jensen, Dale Weiss, and
Dutch Gretzky, please.
Yeah, like it was a collective group of Jags that somehow won a game
for sure, yeah,
against the Winnipeg Jets, and it was just phenomenal. Like the Canucks have assembled some pretty good teams over the last couple of years, and to not get 1 win and that be the group of players that last beat the Winnipeg Jets is just laughable to me.
Hockey's funny sometimes, and sometimes teams just seem to be your bogey team for whatever reason. And I mean, even as weird a game as it was, like the first competitive game of hockey in months when they came into the bubble and played the Jets in an exhibition game, and Canucks looked bad in that game too. And obviously that didn't continue into the bubble, but like, yeah, something about the Jets.
Yeah, I found the tweet, by the way. Matt Baker tweeted this out. Canucks lineup the last time they won in Winnipeg had included Tom Sestito, Ryan Stanton, Darren Archibald, David Booth, Sean Mathias, Jordan Schrader, and Nick Jensen. So
Sean Mathias, though.
If that's not an all-star lineup, I don't know what was. It took that juggernaut to defeat the Winnipeg team. So,
well, you know what they say about Dutch Gretzky. There's nothing you can do to stop him. You can only try to slow him down.
I mean, just an offshoot on that. Sean Matthias, I loved him for no particular reason. I just had a strange attachment to him, and I loved his nickname. Like, the fact that his nickname was another first name that wasn't his. Like, his nickname was Maddie.
Well, okay,
And
but
That's
like,
the first time
I
I've
find
ever
that
heard that nickname.
Oh no, it was like for
Yeah.
sure. I checked that out, and it was, and it's just enjoyable that it's like another first name.
well, no, just to give you some, insight into my thought process when you're walking through this, Sean Matthias is known as Maddie isn't as much of a stretch as I thought. You're like, oh, it's another first name. I'm like, yeah, Sean Matthias. They call him Bob. That's where I thought you were going.
No, I mean it's not that much of a stretch. It's just enjoyable.
Okay.
Like, do they call Nolan Patrick Paddy? I must know.
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Hopefully, a Philly fan can help me.
Well, okay. On that note of nicknames, so the starting goaltender for the Vancouver Canucks against the Winnipeg Jets, who played extremely well, was Thatcher Demko, and people were talking about we were seeing the return of Bubble Demko. So then I sort of hazarded this guess: at what time does Bubble Demko just become Bubble? And that being his nickname. I know, a friend of the show, Sean, Bearded Canuck, who currently no longer is known as that in C4 Discord because he lost a bet. He had said, well, no, it shouldn't be Bubble Demko. It should become Demko. And I don't disagree, but that's not as fun of a nickname. And you got to consider,
Yeah, I mean, I get it,
hockey,
but
like you had Willie Mitchell was called, was it Pickle or something? Because he ate like dill pickle chips.
I mean, there's weird ones, right? Like, for the most part, hockey's really boring with nicknames, as is cricket, but like occasionally you get sort of slightly more interesting ones.
Yeah, I'm just going to call him. We're going to C4. We're just going to start calling Demko Bubble, and it's going to stick. Matt's rolling his eyes.
Well, no, I was just going to say I actually kind of agree with what Sean had been saying in Discord and what Thatcher Demko was saying after that Saturday night game, and it's like it's the proper attitude to have if you're Thatcher Demko is that. Yeah, there was a good run there that he had against Vegas in that series. But number one, they still lost that series. And number two, you don't want to have a stretch of 3 games try to be the tone setter for the rest of your career. If you're Thatcher Demko, you've got your whole future still ahead of you. You've got a real opportunity right now to at least seize the starting job in Vancouver. And if I'm Thatcher Demko, I'm trying to move on from that as much as possible. I'm trying to say this is a look at what I could be. I want to focus on what I can be. So, I kind of agree with what was said.
Okay. From the mindset perspective, I completely get it. I truly do. But Demko got turned into a verb. He needs to go after Peter DeBoer. He used him as the reason why the Golden Knights got bounced by not the Canucks, but a different team. Like that's the struggle, and that's where it sticks. It gained legs because of that. I look at Demko's performance as being more than Bubble Demko. Like when you hear the term return of Bubble Demko, I think that is the return of Demko. And if that's what we're getting as advertised, the future is bright for this kid. I'm talking nicknames here. And again, I know, we have no sway in the matter, but I'm calling him Bubble. Back to the Winnipeg game, though. When Besser scored that goal, not even 30 seconds in, I think it was the 29-second mark of the game, where the Vancouver Canucks win a face-off, put on some pressure, and then Bess just goes to the front of the net in the office and wrists that in. I'm like, my goodness, the Canucks have found the cure that ails them in the Senators. We're going all the way, only to see then the Jets completely turn things around a minute and a half later when Appleton scores his goal. And then to see, was it a shorthanded breakaway that Lowry had? Thankfully, he never got the shot off. But the complexity of that Jets game introduced some doubt in my mind, even though the Vancouver Canucks were winning. I think at one point I even asked, prior to that game, like how many times had the Vancouver Canucks outshot an opponent? And the answer was prior to the Jets game, 1. They outshot the Oilers in that first game of the season, and they have been outshot since. Like, the Canucks went and beat the living daylights out of the Senators and got outshot in every one of those games.
I mean, they were literally clinging on for dear life at some points, trying to stuck in their own zone as the first period ended, I think. And I don't know, it just looked a little familiar, right? Like they're counting on their firepower to outgun their defensive liabilities. And whether they're saved by Demko or they're saved by their firepower, it's kind of worked unless it's against the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, as Brent Butt said, Demko had to flash the Snagglepuss. Well, no, Brent said it, but that was the thing. We're getting big saves from Demko. There was that one, I don't know if the net was empty at the time, but Demko literally used his head to keep the shot. Actually, I think it was the lead up to the empty net goal. Anyhow, Matt, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say I don't disagree with anything that you guys just said. And the Canucks did give up some prime chances against the Winnipeg Jets on Saturday night. The irony is that the Canucks surrendered the fewest shots against that they had all season long. Like the Canucks gave up 24 shots in total against the Winnipeg Jets, and that was by far the fewest number of shots on goal that they had given up all year. The other fewest being 31 against the Edmonton Oilers on the season opener. And then you look against the Montreal Canadiens tonight, and we can talk about that. They gave up 16 more shots on goal. And I mean, you could count on two hands the number of breakaways that they seem to give up against the Habs. So, I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of grade A chances, high danger chances, and just shots in general that the Canucks are giving up this season. In total, the Canucks are actually giving up the most shots on goal on average per game this year than any other team in the NHL.
Yep.
I'm not into advanced stats, but I don't believe that that's sustainable.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be a numbers guy, a computer boy, if you will, to know that that's not sustainable.
But it's sort of, when you think about the Winnipeg game as the example, to your point where that was the fewest shots the Canucks had given up, the Canucks did not look to be in control of that game despite finding a way to reduce the number of shots, because the opportunities the Jets were being afforded were some pretty grade A chances. So we think about this game tonight against the Montreal Canadiens. Canucks get off to a real bad start. No way to look around it. That doesn't help. Adam Gaudette, getting beat in his own zone. I don't even know if he got beat. He got essentially robbed, or he gave it away. I'm not, again, how you look at it. At least Adam comes down the ice and tries to make amends, but that was the lone bright spot. Like I genuinely can't think of another point in the game where I'm like, wow. Yeah, Holtby made some decent stops in the third period when the Vancouver Canucks had already, head off to the hotel to get ready for the next game. But this game tonight felt worse than either one of those two bad losses when the Canadians were here at home.
My question to you, Chris, is how much of that has to do with the Canucks having previously been on a 4-game winning streak and winning some of those games in such dominant fashion? It's one of those things where you're at the top of the roller coaster and then you just plummet right back down to earth when you go up against the juggernaut that is the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, you raise a fair point. I mean, arguably there's that change in emotion, but let's look at the effort. Like if the Vancouver Canucks had put in a solid effort and lost, I probably wouldn't have been as down about it. But I mean, looking at the game, like straight off the bat, how do the Habs get on the board? Nick Suzuki scores the first goal, being left alone in front of the net. There were 3 Vancouver Canucks players between him and the goal line. There was only one Canadian behind the net with the puck. Like these are the things that you don't make mistakes that early in a game about. Adam Gaudette obviously losing the puck to Lehkonen didn't help. Sure, he got that one back, but that Petrie goal at the end of the first, again, it's like and it was off mistakes. Like that stuff just can't happen. And then the wheels fell off the bus in the second. The third was a wash. Like I arguably would almost require that tomorrow's game, the Vancouver Canucks have to come out, and it's not a good effort at this point. It is a dominant effort where they actually get the win.
I was going to say, Chris, is it too early to say, you might say, it's a must-win game?
Mm, mm,
It was definitely closer than the last time we called it.
Look, I'm not
Yeah.
going to apologize for saying that was a must-win game because you know what? It kind of was because they just got the floor wiped with them by the Montreal Canadiens.
Okay, we'll talk more about this in half full, half empty. But I think the end of this road trip is where we potentially see the Vancouver Canucks getting into must-win territory. I think we're still premature. There's still a lot of hockey left. And prior to tonight's game, the Vancouver Canucks were fighting for second place with the Habs. So, is it must-win hockey when you're in a playoff spot and you're comfortably there because other teams that are in your division are having their own players' meetings and must-win games as early as you are? Probably not. So anyhow, you know what? Let's take ourselves here a short break. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com on the Full Press Coverage Network.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? That because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
Looking ahead at the schedule, I'm just going to rapid-fire go through what we're going to see. The Vancouver Canucks play the Montreal Canadiens again, what we would say is tomorrow, but for those of you listening to the podcast now, either today or possibly have already played. They then travel to Toronto for a game on Thursday. They play the Maple Leafs on Saturday and then again on Monday. This is actually the first stretch of games where the Vancouver Canucks are getting nights off in between, which hopefully helps settle things down, maybe gives an opportunity to get some practice time, retread those tires or put new tires onto the car as need be, depending on the game against the Canadiens. But, back to that conversation we were having, is that Tuesday game against the Habs must win? I'm not going to say it is, but gosh darn it, maybe it's as close as you're going to get me to say it at this point. Because if they don't win, and it's an effort like we just saw tonight, I'm sorry, I'm having some serious doubts. Like, good teams don't have these problems.
So I'm only going to provide you sheer numbers, okay? So the Canucks have played 12 games this season, which means they have 44 games left on the year. They're at about 500 right now, 6-6. Of those 44 games, 1/3 of them is against either Toronto or the Montreal Canadiens. 14 games against Toronto and Montreal. They have not played Toronto once yet this season. Only 6 of those 44 remaining games are against the Ottawa Senators. So as far as gimmies go, there's not going to be a whole lot more of those gimme games, and there's still 14, 1/3 of the games left against either Toronto or Montreal. The two teams, Chris, that you mentioned are going to be 1 and 2 in the North Division this season. And from a unbiased perspective, the Canucks probably need to go at least 500 the rest of the way, possibly 4 to 5 games over 500 the rest of the way. So just from a numbers perspective, they got to win at least a couple of those Montreal games and maybe 1/3 of those Toronto games. Minimum.
Yeah, and I just don't know about you, but outside of Ottawa, like, the 2 games they've won against, 1 game against Winnipeg, 1 game against Oilers, like, that doesn't encourage me necessarily to believe that they can rally. And I'm not saying they can't, but I'm just saying I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, I all very, very salient points. Yet I also look at the Vancouver Canucks sort of as a team. When they are on, they're on. And it could be that they're just finding their way to get that on switch permanently pushed. Yeah, Toronto and Montreal, I think, are the clear 1 and 2 in the North Division. I'm not going to suggest it's too early to tell. And we think back to our preseason episode. Again, I'm going to toot my own horn. Those are the two teams I had up there. Where I see the Vancouver Canucks getting in the mix is with the Oilers, the Jets, and the Flames. And I don't think anyone would argue that those teams wouldn't have been mixing it up. What's going well for the Vancouver Canucks right now is you have a team in the Calgary Flames who are encountering very similar issues. You have a team like the Edmonton Oilers who are, again, encountering very similar issues. One might argue maybe worse issues. So I'm almost taking solace in the fact that there's, of these teams that the Canucks are in the fight with, others that are in a tough spot too. The Jets are the anomaly because I still don't know where they fit within that.
Okay. I was just going to make the facetious comment of, when do we get a COVID break in the North Division? Like, when does our COVID break come up? Because, like, such a weird thing to say, but the one thing that's the problem with Canada managing the COVID situation slightly better than their US counterparts is they don't get games cancelled ever.
Well, like the Devils,
the
newest team on the bench.
Also, a quirk of the schedule, they're playing in all 3 time zones, and the schedule is just relentless. So it's just like, obviously it's sign of the times, we can't really do anything about it, but God, when you see like Carolina playing 3 games, I don't think they want to be in that situation at all, but Canucks could use some rest, that's all I'm saying.
Right. I totally agree. And, I can't speak on behalf of what is a COVID break, but what I can say is that the Canucks at least don't have a back-to-back until March after tomorrow/today, whenever it is that you're listening to this podcast. So if you're taking some solace, it's that the Canucks have already played 12 games on the season, and the schedule does get a little bit more physically friendly if you're the Canucks, that there's fewer back-to-backs coming up for this next stretch of games, which is huge because I feel like the Canucks are just playing so many back-to-backs lately, and it looks like there are some other teams like Calgary and Montreal who have benefited from having such a spread-out schedule through the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah. And that actually, raises the point is that if there was a period of time for the Canucks to have their troubles, it's during the this first batch of games, because it's almost an expectation that there would be an added strain. Now, if they can figure things out, turn them around, as we said, after the Tuesday game, they get a night off between every Leafs game. They then get to have 2 nights off before they play the Flames back at home. And again, no back-to-backs again until March. And when they come home, they have that weird quirk of a trip to Calgary for 1 game before coming back home. So I'm not. That's why I'm not at the must win. Like for me, yeah. If the Canucks can't get a point out of the remaining games on the road, that is a big problem. But if they can, they're treading water well enough that I think they can get themselves home.
So I was going to quickly say before we move on here, Chris, is I totally agree with you. If you're still putting a glass half full, the Canucks have warts, just as many warts rather, as the Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames, and the Winnipeg Jets do, the 3 teams that they're going to be competing with for the final 2 playoff spots in the North Division. I will say, if we're putting a bow on the Montreal game tonight, how much of this falls on the coaching staff for this loss? I mean, this is the 4th time now that the Montreal Canadiens just completely exposed the Vancouver Canucks. And, I'm questioning their preparedness coming into this game. Nick Suzuki scores almost in the first minute of the game. Adam Gaudette puts a costly turnover out there that burns them on the power play. Like, it just seems like, structurally speaking, the Canucks just had no answer for what was a very ferocious forecheck from the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens just apply a little bit more pressure than other teams do on the Vancouver Canucks, and the Canucks just buckle. Like, they gave up so many turnovers, so many breakaways this evening that I just question out loud how much of this falls on the coaching staff for not looking back on previous games saying, this is what we need to look out for. This is what has burned us over the last few games against Montreal. At some point, I feel like the coaching staff needs to be held accountable for not preparing these guys enough for some of these important games against the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, I think tonight's game was one of the first games where that seems to have come up as a subject matter because, yes, Travis and his staff have done a really good job overall with the assets they have, but in this very strange season where you're coming up time and time and again in a short space of time on the same attack, you really do have to come up with a better strategy to cover your failings, because clearly the Canucks defense isn't that strong. Their goalies are both new-ish to the system, so that does have to be a coping strategy. It doesn't seem like they're adapting quick enough with that.
It's hard to disagree that, it could be related to coaching, but then I also sort of look at how well Montreal has done specifically against the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, heck, let's take Tyler Toffoli as an example. We've commented how this guy apparently knows how to play hockey. He scored 7 goals this season, 6 against the Vancouver Canucks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not suggesting that Tyler Toffoli is the difference in these games, but could it be that what he knows of the system has helped the Montreal Canadiens better prepare for the Canucks than conversely the Canucks prepare for Montreal? Yeah, that might come down to coaching, but there are, like, you look at the Canadiens, they're taking advantage of weaknesses in the Canucks that other teams haven't been as successful as, taking advantage of. Canucks are making mistakes in every game. You show me a game where they haven't made mistakes, and I have yet to see it. So why is it that the Canadiens have just been able to exploit? I think that there's more to that that's team specific. Now, if we watch the same things happen against Toronto, then I'm more in line with the preparation issue.
But, the broadcast team today mentioned this, but Toffoli has had success against the Canucks since before he played with them.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's some Orca voodoo going on, and I wouldn't read too much into it other than the fact that Toffoli is a scorer and Canucks have defensive weaknesses and turnovers, and they're presenting opportunities and he's taking them. Mm-hmm. Like, I will say that Montreal seem to be better at capitalizing on the Canucks defensive mishaps than any other team seems to be, but
little off the rails here. Speaking of Canucks defense, former defender Chris Tanev scored a goal for the Calgary Flames tonight from his own blue line.
Didn't see the highlight, but I heard it was a sneaky one. So congratulations to Chris Tanev on scoring what will probably be the easiest goal of his career, aside from a couple tap-ins he has most definitely had with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
File that under things one doesn't love to see.
Yeah. Looking at the schedule, though, I think we all agree the Vancouver Canucks need to win against the Canadiens in the second game of the back-to-back. Agreed?
Yes,
Agreed.
But I'm not going to get my hopes up on it.
Okay,
Nodding does not work on podcasts.
So, Matt, is this a must-win? I mean, you already proclaimed must-win territory long ago, but if that wasn't true, is this one the must-win now?
I mean, like I said, the Canucks have 5 more games left against the Montreal Canadiens. They've played 4 already. They've lost 3 of those 4. I mean, I feel like of those 5 games, the Canucks need to go at least 500 against the Montreal Canadiens. So at least pick up 5 points in those 5 games.
Well, I would almost hazard to suggest it's better than 500. The Canadiens have gotten points out of every game against the Vancouver Canucks so far. And being that they're in the same division, the Canucks can't afford to give the Canadiens points. Actually, the Canucks can't afford to give any team 3 points this season. So,
the irony is I don't know how to explain why Montreal has been so successful against the Vancouver Canucks. And we've just spent 10 minutes trying to understand that. But if anybody here watched the Saturday game where Montreal played Calgary, they looked so disjointed against the Calgary Flames. And I don't know why, for some reason, the Canucks look so terrible against Montreal, and yet they're at least competitive in games against the Calgary Flames. So, I suggest that maybe it's just a structural thing that the Montreal Canadiens just simply match up better against the Vancouver Canucks than they do against some other teams. But I don't know how to explain why it is that Montreal's been so successful.
Well, it needs to be noted, though, that one game is also against the Flames was also their only regulation loss this season. It could have been that one game, what you saw was simply what we see about the Vancouver Canucks regularly, right? Like that disjointed, not sure where the answer is going to come from. Not to say that you're wrong, because 9 games played, and 4 of them against the Vancouver Canucks, where they've, made the Vancouver Canucks, clean up. So, yeah, don't know where to go from there. But I'm gonna sort of suggest this. Let's say the Vancouver Canucks lose against the Habs, but then they go and they win all 3 against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Parade's back on.
But you know what I mean? Like that's the nature of the season. That type of streakiness can mean make or break. Like, I don't know when we get to that point where we can rely on that.
The reality is that every single game this season is a divisional game. And so unfortunately, this year is going to be like the roller coaster that you either want to be on or you want to get off of. And tonight's loss against the Montreal Canadiens was one of those nauseating parts of the ride that made you want to get off the ride. But there are going to be some other games where the Canucks are winning back-to-back series and they're winning strings of games together that make you think that they're Stanley Cup contenders all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I feel like we'll get a little bit more visibility on just how good the Vancouver Canucks are or are not when they go up against the Toronto Maple Leafs in that upcoming series set, because they're the only team, as far as I know, that the Canucks have not played in this division so far. So I feel like we have a strong idea of how the Canucks match up against the Montreal Canadiens and how they match up against the Ottawa Senators and how they sort of match up against against Winnipeg, Calgary, and Edmonton. I want some clarity on how they're going to do against Toronto, which is probably the number 1 seed in the North Division.
Right. But even if we go like 3 for 3 against Toronto, the reality still is Toronto's the strongest team in the division, and Canucks are still fighting for 3rd and 4th spot, not 1st or 2nd. So it's about accumulating points any way you can and cashing in on the weaker teams like Ottawa. Maybe that's the only team to cash in on, but there's 6 teams to figure out a way to win against. And you don't need to win every game, but the Canucks have put themselves in a spot where they need to win more than losing. So
all I'm going to say is if the Canucks make the playoffs, I hope they're not playing against Montreal in the playoffs, because that will be a short series.
Yes.
Looking at the Leafs, though, like, okay, we have 4 games remaining on this road trip. Reasonably, what do you expect? And reasonably or not, what do you demand? Anna?
Not really in position to be demanding things from the Canucks. Believe you me, I've tried. I would say optimistically, we get 2 wins out of 4.
2 out of 4? Okay.
Yeah.
See, that was your inner Clay.
That's me being optimistic, yeah, by the way.
Okay. How about you,
Could you
Matt?
tell?
I mean, the good news is I feel like the only team in the North Division that is capable of playing defense is the Montreal Canadiens. And the Canucks have a habit of scoring their way out of trouble. And I think Toronto's defense is a little bit more suspect than Montreal's is. So that alone gives the Canucks a chance to always be in those games. So from a glass half full perspective, I think the Canucks can scrape 5 points out of these next 4 games to at least get 5 of a possible 8.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, and like just to add to that, not that it seems to make much difference now with the way Canucks play defense, but you could just, if a goalie gets hot, you can ride him a little bit now, which wasn't an option in the previous couple of weeks of the season.
Just hey, real quick for you guys before we get to the next break. Looking back on it, and I know hindsight is 20/20, do you think Thatcher Demko should have started this first game against Montreal, or does it not matter at all in your guys' mind? Just because we saw, just because I think Thatcher Demko has been stronger, he's put in some good performances lately. This was an opportunity to let Thatcher Demko run with the ball a little bit, acknowledging that it was still a 7-goal game for Montreal and it might not have made a difference. But was the move to go with Thatcher Demko, or does it not matter at all?
I'll be honest. I don't think it matters. Like, the fact that it's a back-to-back, whether Demko started or Holtby started, you were getting the other goaltender in the next game.
Yeah.
There might be the argument to say, oh, well, if Demko had played in this game, they would have had a much different performance. They might have got the win. I think Holtby didn't have a good game, but if the Vancouver Canucks were giving up that many opportunities to the Canadians with Demko in that, I don't think Demko fares much better.
Yeah.
Like this was completely on the skaters in front of the goaltender and the lack of effort that we saw. Looking just briefly at Toronto as I sort of look ahead in this Canadiens game, I'm going to be happy if they get 4 points out of these 4 games. And how they do it, I, to be honest, don't really care. I just be happy with 4 points. Realistically, I have too many question marks to think that they do. Look at the Maple Leafs. Their special teams right now are top notch. There could be an argument had that Manny Malhotra is the one who's helping bring whatever he is to the Leafs when it comes to special teams.
Special teams. How's that face-off percentage? I bet it's good.
Yeah, well, and I actually don't know the face-off percentage, but you could suggest that one of the reasons teams are good on special teams is they control the puck,
off the face-off. And how many goals have Canucks given off, and shots straight off the face-off? That's
season? Where the worry is for me, is that where are the Canucks weak? This is I haven't watched a lot of the Leafs play, but I just kind of feel that the Leafs might be more the same as what we've seen against the Canadiens. That's what scares me.
Tyler Myers, keep out of the box. That's the word of the day.
We'll take ourselves one final short break here. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network.
He liked to say the F word.
Oh, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
So, as we look to wrap this show up, one of the odds and ends I wanted to touch on is what's going on in the Big Apple with Tony D, one of the greatest human beings on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, he has he's been assigned to the waiver wire, and now it's not like a trade's trying to be worked out. You've got your team saying he's done in a Rangers uniform. They're cratering the value of an already cratered asset. How bad must you be?
I mean, there's a series of things, right? Rangers have, categorically said it's not to do with his social media comments, which honestly is disappointing clarification, but you have to think that that's part of it. And even if it isn't directly, he is a bad team presence. He is the opposite of Jay Beagle. He is bad in the room, and I'm sure it all goes into each other. The fact that he's expressed these very intolerant opinions on social media, you can't imagine he's the best, most inclusive teammate either.
So I obviously, and none of us could really say anything about what is actually happening in the locker room because we don't actually know with full clarity about what has actually transpired. But what we do know is that clearly things have de-escalated to such a terrible point where New York's GM, Jeff Gordon, has clearly stated that he has played his last game as a Ranger, as Chris mentioned. So it obviously speaks a ton of volumes about the character of the player that they are willing to say with such finality that he has played his last game. I mean, we had already known going into the season that he was how do I put this gently? Douche
Don't put it
nozzle
gently.
at best. And I mean, I think we're seeing it now. I mean, there was maybe a time where they were willing to tolerate it when he was putting up the fourth most points among defensemen. But when you're not even putting up points and now you're being a healthy scratch and now you're apparently fighting teammates, you're just not worth the headache. And I would be shocked, to be honest with you, if there's any team out there that's willing to even sign him for a league minimum contract at this point.
I mean, it is disappointing that if you're good enough, your racist opinions doesn't matter, but clearly, like, if you're going to be intolerant, at least be, like, make sure your game on the ice is, to put it one way, unimpeachable. But it's not. Like, he's just a liability through and through.
Now, if for some reason you reach this point of the show and you're like, well, what are they talking about? Backstory here is that allegedly Tony DeAngelo and is it Andre Georgiev?
Yeah.
His first name. They got into an altercation where allegedly a punch was thrown. It's since come out that it wasn't either of those two combatants. It was it Duran? I'm trying to think.
I was still under the impression that it was still Georgiev, but
Georgiev. Okay, well, ultimately the word is a punch was thrown in DeAngelo's direction, and since then more alleged things have come out that DeAngelo was holding Condre's what's his Condre Miller, thank you. His puck for his first goal hostage, and you can see who's pulling it out of the net, and like stuff like this. It's not even like prank material. Like you don't go and do that in the best of times. And this is just now. This guy has all sorts of problems. I kid you not. I kid you not. If for some reason he wound up in a Vancouver Canuck jersey, you'll never hear from us again. I would end this podcast in a moment. I would not support that 1 second. Actually, no, you get one last episode. You'd hear Chris just go and blow his top.
I was going to say, might still put out the podcast. I don't know but I would definitely not be supporting the team.
It would be the C4, not Canucks hockey podcast. Like, but that's the thing though, right? Like, I don't know of anyone around the league that would want to touch Tony DeAngelo with a 400-foot pole at this point. Like, he made it through waivers unclaimed. I get that there is the possibility the team might be interested, but no one wants to lose their spot in the waiver process that they may acquire for, hockey tape on a trade. But why? Play aside. He's just a bad person.
Yeah.
And I'm putting it nicely here when I say this. Like, this has absolutely nothing to do with the political views, which I think are completely out of his mind. Like, he's just he's not a good person. This is the type of person I would not want at all involved in the league. If he goes to the KHL, I feel sorry for the KHL.
And, well, the thing is, like, Chris isn't wrong, and this minor, like, in the scale of things, indiscretion and disagreement, whatever, between Keandre Miller and Tony D, like, it's just kind of indicative of the fact that over and over again, New York hasn't done enough to protect.
Oh, this is on the team. Like, the fact that New York is dealing with this now, man, I'm sorry, they let far too much of this go. But that's the bigger conversation about hockey culture. Too much of this crap can happen, and it's sort of pushed aside or not truly considered.
I mean, it's not even pushed aside. It's not like they put it under the rug. They actively promoted Tony D and his
go
podcast.
listen to his podcast. Yeah, watch your tone.
So, yeah. Yeah, very little sympathy for the New York Rangers, that's for sure. Day late, dollar short in their efforts, but...
Yeah. Transitioning this to, I was going to say better news, though right now maybe in a tough spot. NWHL, I watched some hockey last week. I was just blown away by the play. I was watching the Twitch stream. I want to shout out to the broadcast who are dropping Twitch gift subs. I want to say dropped over 100 Twitch gift subs. I tried to represent by dropping some bits, which is essentially a donation to the league. But the way it works is with the NWHL, half of all of the donations and the subs go to a split between the league and the players. weekend. Cool. But the action itself was fun, good community. I like the concept. I think there's more that they could evolve. In fact, I think like the NHL could learn from what the NWHL is doing. The unfortunate news is we're now seeing teams withdraw. I think it was the Riveters was the start of the weekend, and then was it the Whale today?
So the Whale today, hotel buddies with the Riveters. The Whale don't have any confirmed cases, but
Close
there's
contact.
very little information out there as to what's happening with the Whale. So, yeah, I mean, I've just recently gotten into the NWHL, picked the Whale as my team for obvious blue and green and whale-related reasons.
I was cheering the
Watched them
Whitecaps.
get hammered yesterday, and then now they're out. So, yeah, it's disappointing that you wonder if they had more support, there might be fewer instances of this.
Well,
But in terms
they're
of a
playing
growing
in a
league, it's very
bubble.
exciting.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing in a bubble in Lake Placid. I mean, arguably, the concept has sort of been proven out, but you're right. From a resource perspective, there's fewer dollars involved. And unfortunately, a lot of what we saw from like the NHL, NBA, who also did the bubble system, MLS soccer, who did as well. But there's money there that allows for you to pay for the resources, the support, the testing, the everything else. But no, the most important part is the phenomenal play. Like if you have not watched an NWHL game, please do so. They're currently playing for the Isabel Cup. Check it out. It's on Twitch, twitch.tv/NWHL. It's so easy. One place. I don't have to tell you it's Sportsnet, it's TSN, NBC, whatever. Although it's kind of a travesty that we're not seeing too many of these games televised.
Great.
Anywho, here we are at the end of a show. We covered quite a bit. We drove Matt nuts, which I think is a nice parting gift to give him. I mean, him piecing out on us, as his name says, C4 forever.
Yeah, C4 is a feeling.
I mean, yeah, it's I'm kind of sad now that it's here is the last sort of official moment as a co-host with you guys. And, whether it's been you, Anna, or Clay before, or Adam, occasionally, I guess, for lack of a better term, it has just been so much fun covering this team since 2012, I want to say, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, back doing some hits on TV with the Hog Shack in Richmond and stuff like that.
Well, that would have been 2011 was when we started at CHP.
I mean, either or. I mean, it's been such a long journey, I guess, that I started getting involved here with Canucks Hockey Blog. And, we've had some really great guests as well over the years that I'm proud to say that I was a part of some of those episodes. And it's, I've been trying to think of how I would end this segment, but I think at the end of the day, when people said we were too negative or not positive enough, we were all united in the goal that was to have the Vancouver Canucks win the Stanley Cup at least once in our collective lifetimes. And I was driving past Rogers Arena over the weekend, and I was just thinking about how, like, just once before I die, I would like to see a sold-out crowd, Rogers Arena, 16,000 plus, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals again, and this time the Canucks are winning the Stanley Cup. And at the end, when they're handing out the Stanley Cup for the very first time in franchise history, you have Where the Streets Have No Name coming up, and they're handing off the cup to the Canucks. And all of a sudden, you actually see U2 performing, like real live and in concert, performing Where the Streets Have No Name, and the whole crowd just goes nuts. And you know what? I'm hopeful, to be honest with you, that will happen one day, and hopefully sooner rather than later, because it's. I think this pandemic especially has taught us that you only get one life, and you only get so much time, and I think for all of us, we're just hoping that one day we will actually get to see that come true.
That was beautiful, Matt.
Is the fantasy too far-fetched? I mean, I would love to see you, by the way.
YouTube Maybe, but no, like I think what you just described there is the epitome of, I think, us as fans, really us as the podcast. I've you've been with me for the ride right from the before CHB TV when JJ brought you on with Canucks Hockey Blog, and it's been a joy working with you. I will admit it's going to be a weird transition with you. You no longer in the co-host seat. Like I remember when I started with Clay, you started jumping in, sort of guesting, and then eventually just you brought more to the podcast that Clay and I probably would have never been able to provide. And your departure is going to leave a drastic hole that I don't think we can ever really replace, to be honest. I mean, Anna and I are not going anywhere, and we're still going to be the same podcast we were today, tomorrow, but we're just going to be different and not the same.
Yeah.
And that's that, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like I've taken a lot of time over the last couple of weeks just to sort of look back at all those starts that we had as a podcast. And, one of my fondest memories, to be honest with you, Chris, is recording a podcast in your house with Clay and one snowball microphone, if I recall correctly. And we were just on your couch, your cats like walking all over us and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then, you know what, we got to go to the CKNW studios, and it felt like we had sort of really hit our stride in those years as well. And Anna, you came on board as well, and we had you in studio there as well with us. And so that for me is what I'm going to look back as some of our most fondest memories together as a group. And, I wish it was on so much better terms. I wish the Canucks weren't going through a rebuild at the time. I wish we were playing real Stanley Cup playoff games during those times. But you know what? I'm hopeful that maybe we'll get to do this again with the Canucks in the Stanley Cup finals one day. And maybe I'll be able to show up with you guys and talk about how 100% of BC bettors bet on the Canucks to win a Stanley Cup and millions of dollars are going to get paid out or something like that. But, this is kind of a see you later. It's not a goodbye forever, but it's I'm excited to sort of take some time away and go into a bit of a new journey here. I'm still going to be following you guys. I will always download, and I'll try to start listening a little bit more this time too.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey, Matt, for sure. I've loved co-hosting with you. I've loved watching you and Adam argue and make up,
and sometimes make out, which really changed the dynamic in
that
the
was
studio.
in the pre-COVID times, of course. But yeah, we've had some fun times. We've had some live streams of our fancy drafts. We've had a few live events, and it's just been cool to see how we all grew and adapted from being a CKNW podcast to being in the hot box and now these COVID times. But yeah, as you say, it's not fully goodbye. It's see you later. It's, if you will, but yeah, from now on, you are to us now Matt Who.
Matt Who. Yeah. I mean, you might have to rename you to Matt Who in C4 Discord. On that note, you're sticking around C4 Discord, right?
Yes. Full disclosure, I will be active and participating on C4 Discord. It's honestly one of the best parts about being with this podcast, to be quite honest with you. And by the way, thank you so much to the people who have reached out to me, whether it be on Twitter or on Discord, just to say it's going to suck without me, because to be honest, it will suck without me. And you guys will crash and burn, I'm sure, without me, like Elias Pettersson being on the shelf or something like that. But being on C4 Discord has made it so much easier for me to make this decision as well. So, for those of you who are still listening but not in Discord, 100% you have to get in Discord, because it's such a nice getaway sometimes, because we all know how Canucks Twitter can be a very intimidating and toxic place. We've had such awesome discussions with respectful candor in Discord, and it's made being a Canucks fan normal and fun again in some ways. So really encourage you, and I will keep beating that drum until the end of time about how awesome it has been in Discord, even when Sean and Jay are fighting in Discord, because it's like watching two twin brothers go at it or something like that.
I was going to sort of suggest if if someone were to look at Canucks Twitter and then say, well, what makes C4 Discord different? There isn't a lot of difference outside of the fact that I will come down like a ton of bricks when things get out of hand. I may have done that today. But
you don't
want
Dad to be mad at you.
But what was I referred to? I think, was it a week or so ago? It's like, Dad's talking. Like I take pride in our community, and again, as you so eloquently put there, Matt, it's a phenomenal place to be if you're not part of it. Discord.io/C4 podcast. Check it out. You can have that same conversation you want to have on Canucks Twitter, and if it's done in a respectful fashion, all the more able to do so. If it's not, you'll find that you're just back on Canucks Twitter, and you can go off and do whatever you want to do there. But respect is important at C4. As we wrap things up, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please do so. Subscribing to our podcast helps us grow, and it also pumps our tires a little bit. Preferably, unlike Matt, you do listen to each and every show as opposed to just downloading it. But if you download it, that's perfectly fine. Anna and I have got some pretty cool guests lined up. We're not going to be able to fill the giant crater that Matt's leaving in his departure, but we're going to do our best to have a few different voices come in. And you'll find that Matt will find his way into the show at some point in time. We'll get him to sub in. In fact, I guess the running joke now will be who shows up more often, Matt or Adam. I'm not a betting guy, but I'd put money on Matt. Let me just say. But any final words of wisdom one last time there, Matt, for all the listeners?
Oh man, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to forget something, but thank you to everyone who sort of listened to me here on this podcast over the years. Thanks to JJ who initially brought me into this group, and it's honestly a lifetime of memories with you guys and with everyone who we've had as a guest or as a co-host beforehand. And to Mrs. Producer, who has been so supportive of me doing this for so many years as well, first and foremost. So I know that's something that I have to send some support to as well. And thanks for just listening to me and helping me cope with such bad internet as well over the last few months as well. But thanks to everyone who listened. Again, I'll be in Discord and stuff like that. The greatest moment of my C4 Discord or C4 podcast moment was when we were live broadcasting and the Canucks somehow got Quinn Hughes in 2018. That will be one of my fondest memories of all time. I'm pretty sure I stood up and hugged Adam right on the spot as well, if I'm not mistaken. So that was one of my greatest and most fondest moments of all time on this podcast. And hopefully there will still be some fond memories to come.
How about you, Anna?
I mean, I think I've said my piece, but yeah, Matt, peace be with you.
That was what I was going to say. Peace be with you, because I don't think there would be any other more appropriate way to send you off. But what I'm going to ask you to do one last time for Matt is, can you do the sign off, please?
Oh man, you're going to really get me with the emotions here. But I guess with all that said, I'm out.